The state of Iowa has been the birthplace of many imaginary characters over the years. There's Captain James T. Kirk, the Avenger Hawkeye, even Miss Piggy. And in the real world, Iowa State Fair has been able to make us believe in imaginary political characters like wannabe frontrunners Rick Santorum or Mike Huckabee and Fred Thompson. You see, Iowa is a political field of dreams, if you will, where candidates go in hoping to come out as a real political boy or girl. That's certainly what Ron DeSantis thought before he was quickly reminded that the Iowa GOP only has eyes for Trump. Oh, there were candidates who went and rapped to Eminem's Lose Yourself and Nikki Haley engaged in thinly veiled ageism, but none of them could match the power of the twice impeached, thrice indicted former president. Donald Trump was at the fair for all of 2 hours, but in that short amount of time, he managed to prove that his hold over the Republican base is as solid as ever, as hordes of MAGA faithful followed him around, lined up for autographs, and chanted things like, "We love Trump." He even brought an entourage of Florida Congress members with him, seemingly to troll Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. It was a spectacle that made one thing exceedingly clear. Donald Trump's nomination on the Republican ticket appears to be inevitable. Joining me now is Ty Rushing, senior editor at the Iowa Starting Line. Ty, thank you so much for joining me tonight on the Readout. You covered the Iowa State Fair. Is this your first state fair, or have you been to previous ones to sort of compare the energy of this last weekend to previous state fairs?
So I've been in Iowa for 10 years, so I've seen quite a few candidates at the Iowa State Fair. But this last weekend, I have to say the energy was unlike anything we've ever experienced. And I talked to a bunch of other veteran Iowa political journalists about this as well. And we thought it was going to be an attendance record. It was so just overly crowded. I mean, all the food lines were packed. I mean, and candidates were just running everywhere.
So you had a run-in with one particular candidate. It says here that the DeSantis campaign team contacted law enforcement to prohibit you and other reporters from Starting Line from attending his events. First off, how did that play out, and what was the justification? There was even a statement released by the Iowa Association of African American Journalists. What happened, and are you used to this sort of hostility from candidates when they come to the state?
No. I am not used to that kind of hostility at all from any sort of candidate in the state, regardless of their political affiliation. And I still have never received an answer from the campaign on why I was barred from entering. They put that statement out saying it's because I registered as an attendant rather than media. But other than that, but no one ever said anything to me. There was no words exchanged. There was just like, I showed up for the second of 3 events I planned on covering, DeSantis events I planned on covering that day. And the next thing I know, oh, cool, here's the sheriff's deputies.
So, and I meant to say the Iowa NABJ. So there were a lot of different things, Iowa caucuses, sort of Iowa state fairs. Lots of people do all sorts of crazy things. Who do you think, given that Donald Trump is dominating the field, who do you think actually helped themselves? Was it Nikki Haley? Was it Vivek rapping? Was there any candidate who actually went around the state fair and demonstrated to people that should Trump tumble or should Trump decide to make them a vice presidential pick, that they can sort of shine above the rest of the candidates?
Yeah, I mean, we still got Tim Scott tomorrow, so we got to see how that plays out. But I think Vivek really shined at the fair as well. Because, I mean, bad rapping aside, that man was everywhere. He was meeting everyone, talking to everyone. He did the fair side chat with the governor. He did the soapbox. He didn't stop. One of my coworkers told me that his team was telling him he needed to take a break, and I don't think he did. He worked his butt off. And even DeSantis was doing a lot more crowd work than he did when he first started his campaign. I mean, he had his kids with him. He had Casey with him. When he was doing his fair side chat with the governor, his son had blue cotton candy or a snow cone around his mouth. He was putting in a lot of work. But the thing about it is, no matter how much work he put in, he still got overshadowed by that one guy.
So here's the thing also, and I think this is important, sort of moving out of the Iowa State Fair and what people will do next. Iowa is a place that a lot of candidates like to make multiple trips to in order to sort of establish themselves. And even though we're still several months away from the Iowa caucuses, people are trying to get their teams on the ground. Given how much money is sucked up by the former twice impeached president, given the sort of faltering that we've seen in the DeSantis campaign, what are people's teams looking like on the ground? Does Tim Scott have an established campaign headquarters? Does he have people out working the crowds on his behalf? Or are we still sort of seeing a point where they're still establishing their offices and still attempting to get to know the voters and haven't quite set up their campaign teams?
Yeah, I think a lot of other folks are still just kind of putting in and work and like, getting that thing established, getting set up. But like I hear there's a lot of groundswell support coming for Tim Scott because, he tells his story really well. He's done a couple of well-attended events. And I actually heard a little bit of buzz about him from another reporter who covered it, an early stop he made in Iowa. And this was during the legislative session. I kind of was in disbelief a little bit. I'm like, really? He's got some kind of support like that. But yeah, I'm even hearing that from some Democrat people who are saying that the one they're really worried about is him and not DeSantis.
The idea that Iowa could be the field of dreams for Tim Scott is hilarious to me. Thank you so much, Ty Rushing, for joining us this evening and reporting from Iowa. This is Jason Johnson sitting in for Joy Reid. We'll be right back.